I want to pull up this story here. This is from the recount. Minneapolis judge sentenced Thao, a former police officer who held back bystanders as other officers pinned George Floyd to the ground, to 4 years and 9 months in state prison. I look at this judge and I see a deeply, deeply evil individual. This cop, Thao, probably pronouncing his name wrong because there's some nuance to that name. It's Touthao. He's 37 years old. He's a 9-year veteran of the force. He arrives on scene and all he did was hold back bystanders. And I don't believe he could even see what was going on or knew what was going on. He's gotten, I think, 3 years in prison at the federal level and now just about 5 more years at the state level.
Wow. This
is it. If you go against the regime, or actually if you accidentally go against them, they just destroy your life.
Yeah. You know, this racialism, I think of it like this black hole theory of politics and justice and such. It's like racialism, politics, you know, it's like a black hole, and it distorts everything around it, including the justice system. And I don't see how I know how we're all supposed to think about the Floyd verdicts, but I don't see how anyone could look at those Floyd verdicts and think, well, that was justice, in the sense that the jury operated honestly and dispassionately without pressure, again, of violence, and we forget about that part of this scenario, and just kind of what people understood about Floyd's situation at the time, and the obvious and the training that the police officers had that they seemingly were trying to follow. You know, I didn't support the verdict. It was, you know, you don't want to see someone die necessarily, but certainly in my view it wasn't murder or anything close to it.
Here's where I go crazy. This Thao gentleman, he was basically responsible for holding back the crowd while these other officers kneeled on him. And sure, maybe he didn't do everything perfect, and maybe ultimately he could have prevented it. I don't know. What drives me crazy is that this guy, even though he's not really culpable, I think if you're evaluating this fairly, he's not truly culpable for the passing of George Floyd, but he's going to do maybe 8 years. But then you have the murderer of Daniel Shaver in Arizona, which if you watch that video, it's one of the most egregious cop killings that has ever transpired in American history, as far as I'm concerned. And he walks free. Better than that, he also gets a pension for his psychological damage from doing what he did.
This is the guy who was told to crawl on the ground?
Yes. Yep. Simon Says execution.
Right. Yeah.
I don't know much about that. When did this?
There was a guy in a hotel room and he had a pellet gun because he was a pest exterminator. Someone called into the police and said they saw someone with a gun. So these cops show up, scream at him with rifles pointed, saying, on the ground, put your hands up, put your hands down, crawl towards me, now put your hands up, now crawl towards me, now put your hands up. When the guy's pants start falling down and he pulls them up, the cop just unloads on him.
He was drunk. He had his shirt off and he was wearing sweatpants at the time. He was in a hotel and they had him on his knees. And so as he's crawling towards them with his hands up, his knees are dragging and pulling his pants down, his sweats down. So he goes and he reaches down to pull them up, and
while crying.
Yeah.
Crying, the cop just unloads on him.
Terrified.
He was horrified.
Yeah.
This George Floyd thing, I think it's another example of how technocracy is leading us to communism, because what happens is the media chooses what clips get shared over and over and over again. True. And what can't be shared. I tried to talk about the fentanyl.
Media? The media?
Yeah.
You mean
we'll say Facebook.
Social media algorithms.
Yeah. Meta, for instance, censored my posts trying to talk about the fentanyl in his system. The guy was doing an 8-ball or a speedball
against
or something.
The rules. It's hate speech.
Behind the wheel of a car. So like the media that got pushed out was the few minutes that he can't breathe, I can't breathe. People go crazy. And then the cops, the job of the law enforcement is like, protect the peace. They don't care about who's guilty or innocent. They don't want riots.
Yes.
So they...
Yep.
That's right.
This Thao is going to prison because they just want to avoid more social breakdown. That means, understand this, if you live in a city like Minneapolis, if you live in a city like Portland or Seattle, and you are a victim of violent crime from the likes of a far left extremist or even just a run-of-the-mill criminal, you could be the victim and there is no out for you. You fight back, you go to jail. You try and stop the criminals, you go to jail, just like the guys in the Ahmaud Arbery case. You cower in the corner of your house as people scream outside. The cops go into your home and they arrest you. That's what we've been seeing happen.
And of course, it's the black community in Minneapolis who suffer the most here because the police have been decimated there. They have virtual no protection from the police anymore. And so, you know, now we're veering towards anarchy in our major cities as a result of the soft on crime policies resulting or where, but not resulting from, where the Floyd killing was used as an excuse to advance this radical agenda of decriminalization of everything. They don't believe in putting anyone in prison for any reason.
Yeah.
You know, it's not, they just don't oppose the death penalty. They don't want anyone in jail. And when you think the whole system's corrupt, all jails are corrupt and no one should go to them. This is a radical approach that's getting people killed right now as we speak.
Well, one minor clarification. It really is specifically dictionary definition anarcho-tyranny, because not only are they not enforcing violent crime laws, but they also disarm the people, so they can't even defend themselves. So on both ends of it, you're basically just set up to be a victim.
And then is that because from the leader's perspective, if you have one class violating another class, and then the other class decides to fight back, now you've got two classes of villains and you can arrest them all.
The criminals destabilize the system and keep people in a state of constant fear and chaos, unable to take any actions against the power structure. So long as there are people at the bottom fighting each other, the people in power are
because
protected.
We need grassroots movements to control the top. That's the whole point of the United States, is the people control the government. If the people are fighting each other, they're not going to be able to rein in that power structure. I'm just concerned that what Clint was saying, that the ship has sailed and the empire is now in the conquest.
I think like throughout history, what we have seen and what we've seen in our media depicting potentialities of revolution, I'm reminded of the scene from V for Vendetta where the inspector is narrating. He says, eventually someone does something stupid. It then shows the police officer, the finger man, shoot the little girl wearing the mask, and then all the locals just surround him with baseball bats, pipes, and crowbars, and then the camera pans up, and the assumption is they beat him to death. When you get to a point where police officers are going to prison for literally doing nothing, when you've got stories of people who on January 6th were walking around confused. I learned this story just recently of a woman who I met. And she said that it was a few hours after the Capitol had been breached. They were walking around D.C. and they walked to the Capitol with nothing going on. There's no people. There's like people walking around. There's no cops. There's no barricades. No one saying anything. They walked up looking around and then left 4 misdemeanor charges.
We should have her on the show.
A year and a half in jail.
I was thinking we should have her on the show. I don't know how prudent it is to have someone on the show that's facing January 6th charges, but that story needs to be told.
An interview perhaps. But the question is, at what point do regular people say there isn't a justice system?
I'm getting there.
And I want to clarify this. The reason why the founding fathers thought innocent until proven guilty was so important was not because they like you. Partly because they like you and they're good Christians, God-fearing people who believed in individuality and rights. But no. There was something greater that the founding fathers talked about. If people believe that if no matter what they do, the government will punish or imprison them, then they have no incentive to be law-abiding citizens. If a criminal is treated all the same as an innocent person, then screw it. But if the system says we protect you if you're innocent, then there is every incentive for the individual to be an innocent person, knowing that we'll fight on your behalf. But that's changing now. With what this judge has done, with what they're doing in January 6th, they are telling the people, no matter what you do, we will punish you. No matter if you're innocent, confused, ignorant, or otherwise. If you're at your house in Milwaukee and BLM shows up screaming and threatening you, a group that had previously set fire to a house twice, the cops will come into your home and arrest you. That actually happened. Fair point. The guy living in the house brandished a shotgun through the window, not out the window, but up to the glass of his window. He showed the people protesting he was armed. So the police came, went into his house and arrested him, and the BLM activists cheered for it. These are people who had previously been at a house that they set on fire twice.
Yeah.
The guy that got arrested, his house was set on fire two times per. Okay, all right.
BLM shows up. BLM affiliated activists essentially formed a mob. Showed up to a house where they believed 2 girls had been illegally held. It was not true. They set fire to the house. The fire department puts the fire out. They leave. The mob sets fire again. Fire department puts the fire out. That same group, similar group organized by similar people, show up to the house of a guy who had criticized Black Lives Matter, screaming and protesting in front of his home. In front of his window, he brandishes a shotgun in his own house. They call the police that he brandished a weapon. The cops walk up to his house and arrest him from in his own home. Wow. It is easier to arrest you, the target of the mob, than it is to deal with a riot.
Yeah.
I was watching these comments, some of them. And, when we talk about this stuff, this is the black pill. I can take it. I don't necessarily get black pilled. I can handle a little bit of it. I'm like, I'm wargaming this. Where does it go? Revolution? an upheaval and an overturning of the U.S. government to something that will never be nearly as good as the U.S. government. We have it so good right now.
Yeah,
This is what were you going to say, Tom?
I think our republic is tottering, Ian. I think, if Trump is jailed and is unable to campaign or effectively has the election turned against him because of this jailing, there's not going to be riots. There's not going to be mass demonstrations. There's just going to be concern. And, the Constitution will have been left behind. We'll be in a post-constitutional system where American citizens who are on the wrong side of the Democratic Party, and this, I don't like to get partisan, but it's true. This is the Democratic Party using the Justice Department to jail their political opponents. And there are a lot of Americans who aren't going to, participate in the system, our political system, if they fear that they're going to get jailed. I think one of the ugly undersides of the indictment of Trump is Smith's targeting of citizens in the several states who were, best they understood under the law, trying to challenge an election and in a way that had been done many times before that could seemingly comply with federal, state, and constitutional law. And he suggested they were engaged in criminal conspiracy. So that's a signal. Don't challenge any elections that we've won, so to speak. Otherwise, you'll get jailed. But now, some people are going to say no, and they will continue to. But a lot will stay out of the game.
Thanks for watching this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. Hang out with us live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. and become a member over at timcast.com for uncensored, members-only shows exclusive. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.